All right, welcome back to Becoming the Remnant. Today I have some very special guests with me, Pablo and Katie Ruiz. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves, tell a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Well, I'm obviously Katie, and
Here we go.
and I'll let you, Pablo, talk about what we do. Just kick that off with the introductions. But we're currently living in Alabama. We've lived in several states, but we're basing out of Southern Alabama now, and continuing the ministry that God's called us to.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been married for 21 years, and the last 10 years of our ministry, we've been spending it mainly in Cuba, navigating the whole island of Cuba, working with the pastors there, starting mainly with the underground church through seminars and ministry and help, and actually there are several churches too there that are helping us to accomplish this work. So it's been an interesting part of the ministry just to be involved in the communist nation and just see the dynamics of how the church advance in the middle of adversity. So we are pretty blessed to be part of what the Lord is doing in the nation of Cuba.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you guys wouldn't mind, can you kind of talk about how you met and how you got started? I think that's a really cool story, if you don't mind sharing.
It's so entertaining. Um,
Both,
there's two where
diff-
you get both of us
both
together.
Yeah.
perspectives.
So I left to be on the mission field when I was 19 years old. I moved to the Philippines and I was there for a year and a half. And then the Lord redirected me and sent me to Santiago, Chile to work in the Damata school there. And I was there, had been there a couple of years. And then in 2003, I moved there in 2001. In 2003, I was ready to leave. I was like, I'm sure, certainly God has something else for me. I was getting very unsettled,
Ta-da.
and so I was kind of planning my exit. And right in the middle of that, thinking that I knew better than God, apparently, Pablo showed up at a seminar, and it was not love at first sight on
Not at all.
either of our sides. He was very competitive. Actually, one of our first encounters was playing paintball. I made the mistake of characterizing him with a youth, and that was like a big no-no because he wasn't a youth. So kind of like I got started off on the wrong foot with him, and we were playing paintball, and like the rule was if you get caught, like they say, surrender, you can't shoot because they caught you, but just out of like self-defense, I don't know, reaction, I turned around. He's like behind me, he's like surrender, and I turned around and I was like started firing, just boom boom boom. So we just got we didn't really get started off on the best foot. I was way too playful and goofy for him, and he was way too serious for me. So we really weren't even friends for the longest time. He started coming to the Bible school, and kind of we had the same friend group, kind of hung out together. But again, I was too unserious, and he was too serious. And
Still,
um,
until today.
yeah, you've listened up all the way. I'm still not serious,
That's what
but
I meant.
but anyway, so what came first? The step, or you told me?
The step. No, I told you.
Yeah, so he just told me one day we were barely even friends, and he's like, God told me that I'm going to marry you. You know, the typical Bible school line
Yeah.
that it's given.
Typical
And I
Christian
was
male line.
like, yes, exactly. And I'm like,
Hey, it works.
not always, not always. I was not okay with it. So I was like, I don't even like you. You know, I'm going to move back to the States and I'm going to marry an American. I had my own plans. And I was like, it's not, not going to happen. I don't even like you. We're not even friends. And then I'm like, God, that's not fair. Like, how can you talk to him and not talk to me? Like, I'm way more spiritual than he is. And so that's not right. And so then you can tell you're that part of the stepping. This is not recommended for personal use.
Yeah,
Okay,
don't try this at home.
don't try this
Do
at
not try
home.
this at home, kids.
No.
No, it was just, I didn't know anything about hearing from God, brand new concept of the scriptures. Been saved all my life, but I never really walked with God. I never had the chance to not even know what the Bible say. So it was everything brand new to me. So the first couple of times I heard the voice of God, one of the things was that like Katie's going to be your wife, and I was almost as irritated in the beginning because I was like, I don't like her. I can't stand her.
I'm a delight.
But it's one of those things that I don't think God pressures you to do things. He's just trying to give you information. Me not knowing anything, not knowing how to approach that, how to go with that, I just went and told her one day. I said because I was irritated with the whole situation. So I went and told her like I'm gonna marry you, and of course she told me the story like no, I'm leaving and I'm moving back to the States and I'm gonna marry in America, and I'm like, well, I'm just telling you what I heard. So I walk
And
away.
neither one of us, I was like, I'll never marry a national. And he was like, I'll never marry an American.
Yeah.
And so neither one of us were even looking for each other.
Yeah.
And one day in Bible school, we were praying early morning before the class started. We were praying, and this thing just popped in my heart, like everything that the sole of your foot tread upon shall be yours. So I went and stepped on her foot, and
He did. I was walking like,
that's why I say don't try this at home.
It's
we were
funny.
praying, and he
I'm
literally
laughing
came.
because I've seen so many memes about this. Like I've seen people do that
Yes.
scripture, and then it's like a guy like coming up and putting his foot on her. Like it's literally a meme. That's so
Oh yeah,
funny.
but this was 22 years ago. This is pre-meme.
Yeah.
and so
Maybe he started it. Maybe you started
started
this meme.
he inspired it. Somebody heard the story and they started making memes.
That's so
I
great.
wonder how many people have been stepped on since this story has been told.
So
So anyway, I'm praying and I'm like, can you not see me? Like I remember him stepping on me. It was very obvious. I'm like, I'm right here. Like, pay attention, man. I was so irritated. So anyway,
I didn't know anything better. So a couple of months later, she was crazy for me.
that's that's fast forwarding a little bit.
That's my version, and I'm dying with it.
It took a few months. I was still like adamant, like no. And finally, one day through a series of events, I felt like God said, "Will you take me out of the box when it comes to your spouse? Like you have me in a box. You have what you think you need, what you think you want, and will you take me out of the box?" And so one night before I went to bed, I was like, "Okay, God, I'll take you out of the box," because it wasn't like there started to become an attraction. Like we spent a lot of time together, but I was still like very against it, like,
Right.
no, this is not where I want
Right.
this to go. And so I was just like, okay, God, I'll take you out of the box. Like, and so I woke up the next morning and my alarm clock went off, and usually I have it on the beep sound, because I'll just sleep right through the music. And it was this song in English about like love and not running away from love. Like it was so crazy. I'd never heard it before, never heard it after. So I'm like slamming the alarm clock, like trying to shut it off. And I knew like I just woke up differently, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, he's the one. I mean, it was that quick. It was that
That's
quick.
so great.
And so the rest is history. We met in 2003. February of 2003, and we were married in June of 2004.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
when you know, you know.
Yes, when you know, you know. So, Katie, you mentioned kind of stepping out on your own as a missionary when you were young. Can you kind of talk about that experience and kind of like how you knew how to go, when to go, where to go, just like kind of that whole experience?
Yeah, when God's involved and you just want to follow him, you just want to obey him. I remember hearing one time, a long time later, oh my goodness, what's his name? A minister, I can't think of his name right now. Said,
Great
if
guy.
I can picture him as a gray beard, if it's in your heart to always be in the center of God's will, to follow God, to obey God, you will always find yourself in his will.
Yeah.
And so we make it so difficult of like, how do I know I'm in the will of God? What if I'm missing it? What if I'm missing God? But if it's in your heart to follow him, you're always going to find yourself following him. We might make mistakes along the way, But to be so far outside his will, unless you're just in complete rebellion and refuse to obey him, you'll always find yourself there. So it's really, I think we overcomplicate things. But I grew up in a missions based church. I grew up with missionaries coming through my church like every year, the camp meetings, and so I was really exposed to that. I'm a middle child, extremely introverted. And so I wasn't, looking to like move off to another country. But I knew, like in my heart, I knew out of high school, I wasn't going to go to college, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And so anyway, I just kind of through certain things that happened, I went to the Bible school at our church, and then I went to Damata School of Missions after that. And because I just started just I don't really know what led up to it. It's just taking one step at a time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I was 15 years old, the guest speaker at our summer camp had a word over me that I would go all over the world and I would tell young people about the love of God. And I was just kind of like, whoa, I don't know. Like, it was like, that sounds pretty cool, but I don't know if I'm capable of that. I don't know if I can do that. And but it was never really like front and center in my mind. And so there were a lot of people at that time from my church going to the Damata Bible school or mission school and then to the Damata schools. So I was around that. And so just kind of, the Lord just directed me to go to the Bible school at my church and then go to DSM. I wanted to go straight to DSM out of high school, and thankfully God intervened and I went through the Bible school because I realized I'm still using what I learned in those 9 months. Because I'm like, I'm never going to preach. I'm not going to teach. I just want to go help. I don't need to know how to write a sermon or anything. And so then God's like, no, you're going to be doing more than that. And so we were able to interview with the overseers when they came through the Bible school. And it was between Estonia and the Philippines. And I honestly think both of them would have led to Chile. I think I could have chosen each one, either one. But just through praying and just following the lead of the Spirit, I went with the Philippines. And so I was there for a year and a half. I remember I left in January of 2000. So we all survived Y2K, so I was ready to head out. And the younger generation won't even know what I'm talking about. This is the older generation.
A lot of us were not alive back then, but it's all right.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So anyway, just aged myself.
I'm just talking with you.
Yes.
It will be 26 years in January that I left for the mission field. And so anyway, it was January I was leaving, and this guy who was at our church for a very short amount of time, a young guy who was a friend, and he's like, so you're leaving in January to go to the Philippines? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. Because I kind of had started like, well, maybe I'll push it off a little bit just in my mind. Maybe I don't need to go right now. And he's like, no, you're going. You're going to go. And immediately that like clicked in me like, yes, I'm going. I need to go. Like if anybody would have come and said, oh, you can wait. It's okay. I probably would have done that. And so I just needed that like finality of, no, I'm going that. And 26 years later, gone to several other places, lived in other places and stuff. But that's how I got started. It literally is just following God one day at a time. There's big decisions that you have to make. And in hindsight, it gets easier because you understand the leading and how God speaks to you. But unless you take that first step, you'll never know. And so that step took me to Chile later, and then back to the States, and just everything that we've been doing.
Yeah.
So what would you say, and this is a question to both of you, but what would you say to somebody who maybe like has something on their heart and knows that they're supposed to step out and obey, but they're maybe like struggling to take that leap or take that step? Like, what would you have to say based on your own experience or just an encouragement for that person?
I'll go first. I would say if you're waiting for everything to be perfect, you're never going to go. You're never going to do anything. There are certain things, certain responsibilities, obviously, that need to be taken care of. But nothing will ever happen until you take the first step. And again, this is probably more my generation, but the Indiana Jones movies that everybody talks about, the Temple of Doom, like when he takes a step off the ledge, then the path appears underneath him, but it doesn't appear until he takes that step. And so it's really just, you've spent time in prayer and you've spent time preparing in the natural, and you just feel that like you just can't get away from it. It just keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. Then you do it, and you just have to take the step. I think I think there's a lot of people sitting around waiting for everything to be lined up perfectly, and then I'll take the step when I have all the finances, and when I have all of this, and when I have all of that, then I'll do it. And it just doesn't work that way, unfortunately. I mean, it would be nice if it did, but that's not really faith either.
Right.
We're trusting God, not ourselves.
And I think somebody said it this way: if you're not willing to miss it for God, you're never going to hit it. And I think there's some truth concerning to that, because you have to be willing to fail. You
Yeah.
have to be okay that sometimes you might miss the mark. But if you're at least are not trying to hit something, you're never gonna launch it. You're never gonna do it.
Yeah.
I think we had tried too hard to teach people how to pray the plan, which is nothing wrong with praying the plan. I think we had teach people to prepare for the adventure, which is nothing wrong with preparation. But I think we take away the excitement of just do it what is in your heart. We pack it with so much information concerning, make sure it's God, and make sure that you're not missing it, and make sure that because it can cost you so much, instead of like encouraging people to use that excitement about, I think God is saying this, and using that as the platform that will launch you into what you already know, which is mystery, your
Yeah.
future. You don't know how it's gonna look, but you must use that excitement to be able to launch. And I think the reason that the early church was so successful in what they did is because as soon as the Holy Spirit hit them, they went with it. They didn't expect to get all the information. They didn't expect to have all the details about how ministry will end up being. They just went with what they got, and they were faithful to fulfill what they got, and then the Lord increased them. But they were good with that first excitement. I think sometimes we try to complicate too much Christianity
Yeah.
and the call. Like, what is the call? And we go through all these definitions. And I grew up in a Christian church through miracles after miracles, but I did not have a personal experience with God until I was in my 20s.
Till he
And
stepped on me.
until that, of course. But then I started realizing how easy it was to interact with God. But all my background was like legalism and doctrines and ideas and concepts, and start creating this shell that didn't allow me to actually step out and do what I believe God was saying at that time. And I think sometimes, again, there's nothing wrong with preparation. There's nothing wrong with praying. There's nothing wrong with making arrangements. But I think sometimes we take away that excitement, that first excitement where, hey, I think this is God. And we need to be okay helping people to go and do something, encourage them to do something, even if they miss it.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I think too, like especially before I hit record, what we were talking about, the big move that's coming in my life. Like a lot of people have been like, "Well, like how do you, like you're just doing that?" Like, and I'm like, "Yeah, I know in my heart that it's right, and so I'm gonna do it because at the end of the day, like." We have to be willing to take those steps. And a lot of people ask me like it's some crazy thing. And I'm like, I know that I'm privileged to be able to, or not like, have a family right now and not, so it's easier to move right now for me personally. And so I do recognize that, but also like, I'm like, is this not what this is supposed to be? Like the Lord speaks something to your heart and then you do it. And that's not to say that like, I'm better than anybody else. So that's not what I'm saying. But I just like, I wish people, like you were saying, would get to that place of like, you just have to step out and do it. Like, you know, the early church, like you were saying, the Lord spoke to them and they just did it. Like, you know, I think a lot of times too, we treat the things that the Lord speaks to our heart as kind of just like a suggestion. And you know, we don't have that reverence of like, no, like God Almighty just spoke to my heart and I have to do this, you know.
Yeah.
So it's so true.
Yeah, and I think that that word is correct, reverence,
Hmm.
reverence about who is God, who what's He doing with us, why He called us, why He chooses us for such a time as this.
Yeah.
If we are in the end times, which we most can agree we are there, time is short,
Yeah.
and the problem is still the same from the beginning.
Hmm.
Labors is the issue. So I think we need to have a desire to encourage people to answer the call of God,
Yeah.
a desire to help people to answer the call of God, no matter how crazy that looks.
Hmm.
And like I keep hearing people today when they ask me why you keep going to a nation that you know they're all against you, that you have seen so much opposition, you have seen so much difficulties working there. I said, because I also have seen great, great success.
Yeah.
And I have also seen great interventions. So the question is not if it's going to be any challenge. The
Right.
question that rise for me is like, what's this the other side of the challenge? Because I can't wait to see how God is going to pull it off.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I would love to talk about kind of what you've seen in your ministry on the island, like kind of the things you see in the church down there, and just kind of how it's different than the church in the States, or just anything you're able to share about that.
Well, if I can say this without offending anybody,
No, go ahead.
um,
Offend everybody. That's fine by me.
it's just the devotion for God,
Mm. Mhm.
the commitment
Passion.
to be part of what we call the church.
Yeah.
Especially in the early days when I just got there, the dynamic of the country was a lot more difficult. There was a lot more restrictions. The limitations were also a lot greater. There was no internet. There was no cell phones. There was a lot of lack of communication. Very restricted. And through the early days, it was a lot of moving, constantly moving, hiding, and doing things underground, and jumping from church to church, and changing locations where to stay, and changing transportations. It was a little bit crazy in the early days. Today, we're really enjoying, I think, a season of peace that we're trying to do the most out of it. But the church by itself is one of the primary characteristics is their passion and their determination to obey and serve God.
Yeah.
Because nobody can tell you when the police can come and arrest you. Nobody can tell you when the government is going to come and shut down the church and bulldoze the church. Nobody can tell you when your house might be repossessed by the government for being a religious leader that they just don't want you there. So there's so many things that were happening in the early days, so especially that I just was overwhelmed by this feeling of and knowing that, man, this people is willing to do whatever it takes to show up in church.
And a lot of
Mhm.
these churches, like, if it's raining here in the States, we're blessed, but almost like we're too comfortable.
Right.
If it's raining, we don't want to go to church, or if you're in a state where there's too much snow, well, I'm just going to watch online. And you go there, and most of them don't have air conditioning to on this, tropical island, and they're in these buildings without air conditioning and maybe some fans, and a lot of the times now without even power. You never know if the power
Yeah.
is going to go out. And yet they still come to church and they still praise God with everything they have. And they're still hungry for the word. And so there's just this desire for more of God in the midst of their situations, their difficulty, their lack. is it's very challenging, I think, for us as Americans, and for me, like, to watch them in the midst of what they're living in, and you go to their services and it's just like, is so powerful.
Yeah.
And their churches, and then we come here and you can barely get somebody to clap their hands in a nice, comfortable,
Yeah.
climatized atmosphere,
And it's
so it's
not,
like, it's frustrating, but we learn from it,
yeah, it's not to
it's
judge. It's just
no.
Yeah.
the reality is so different, and they have so little, but at the same time they carry so much.
And they're
Yeah.
out on the streets evangelizing, like in large groups,
Yeah.
like doing for kids evangelism or just adult evangelism. They're drawing massive crowds of people, getting people saved, getting people healed in a nation where that's not legal. Like,
Right.
they can't do that, and they don't care.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to do it anyway. They are going to get people saved. They are going to reach
And
people.
their churches are growing. I mean, not too long ago, we separated a couple of young pastors that we were trying to see if they could wait until we can find them some locations to launch them into the pastoral position, and they were like, no, I think we need to go. So we pray, we launch them into their call, and both two of them went and start churches under the trees,
That's so
and we were so excited because I seen this before. One of actually our main contacts there, I met this guy several, maybe 6 years ago, 4 years ago. 25 people under a tree. They were faithfully meeting there. Rain or hot or heat didn't matter. They were there. They were there, and they were praising the Lord in the parks, and they got kicked out of different parks and kick out under different trees, and today he's managing a church, or he's pastoring a church close to 700 people right now. So it went from 25 people under a tree to almost 700 people
wow.
into a building that by the time we finished the renovation, it was too small for the amount of people coming. Um, so when we launched the second set of pastors, we knew it was a matter of time before they start just growing again, and seeing God working on their behalf. And one of them, we got the news a couple of months ago. The government came and cut the tree where they were meeting because it was providing a lot of shade. And they
Hmm.
find another tree the following Sunday, and just from moving from one tree to the other one, they multiply double of people in one weekend. And it's just insanity. I mean, only
Yeah.
only things like that God can do it. So you I tell people I go to the island to get excited and to get refreshed. And yes, it's a lot of work, and yes, mentally and physically, you had to overcome a lot of inconvenience because we don't have the comfort that we might have at home. But you come back with so much vision and tenacity and desire to not believe in any lies and not to give up, because you can see what God is doing in the middle of such a difficult situation that you're like, I don't have problems. I have
Yeah.
circumstance, but I do not have problems. So it
Yeah.
puts you in perspective that what you're facing, yes, it could be difficult, but it's not the worst case scenario.
Yeah, it makes me think of I was watching I don't know if I was watching or reading it, and anyway, it was an interview with a pastor in the US and then a missionary in China that works with like the underground church there. And the pastor in the States, he was well-meaning, but he was like, "Oh, I'm going to pray that the church in China can be more like the church in the States." And the Chinese missionary was like, "No, don't pray that." He's like, "I what we have going here, like we don't want how comfortable, how complacent you are." And it's so true. Like I think there's something in desperation. Like when God is all you have, all you can cling to, like the faith that you develop so quickly is like this is all I have, you know? And like you said, we are so blessed in the States of everything we have, but I agree that it's made us so comfortable because, a lot of, not just on the island, but in other places, there's a lot of believers who have to depend on God for their food or where they're going to sleep or, and we're just so we've never depended on God for those things, and so, which is a blessing, I agree, but also like we're just so comfortable in like we only need him, or we act like we only need him like when we need a miracle or something. We're just so like,
Yeah.
I don't know, you know what I'm trying to say? Like
When
we're
we,
so
when we run
comfortable.
out of the line of credit, that's when we need
Yeah.
God. As long as like we can pay for it, we're fine. Like God,
Yeah.
we got it.
Yeah.
And so that is my experience with the church on the island. It's been seeing God working miracle after miracle after miracle and providing
So
and
cool.
helping us.
And
Uh,
we've seen from compared to when he first started going to now that they've really relaxed a lot of things against the churches. Like they actually, this church that now has 700 people, they had their anniversary service outside because they couldn't find a building, or the building fell through,
Mm-hmm.
and they had 500 people, at least about 500 people,
on the
4 to
streets.
500 people on the street all together in one place for their anniversary service
Wow.
outside. And not one police officer stopped by. They
Praise
didn't get
God.
stopped once. I mean, that would not have happened probably even
That's a
3 years
miracle.
ago. Wouldn't even
Yeah.
have happened. So God is really, we know he hears their prayers. And they pray a lot. They pray a lot. And you can see, God moving and on their behalf. There's still so much opposition that they're facing, just in their daily lives,
Yeah.
which then is like, your heart goes out for them because they're trying to take care of their own families, and then the pastors are having to take care, they have the responsibility of the church. And then there's just all this going on with, if there's going to be food, if there's going to be electricity, and all this stuff, and yet they're just pressing forward. And so they feel it,
Yeah.
they get tired, they want to give up, they want to quit, they want to leave, but they don't. So it's not like they're just riding on these wings of grace and
Mm-hmm.
everything's, just this is
No, for
wonderful for
sure.
them. It's hard, it's a
Yeah.
struggle for them, so we have to remember to pray for them, as
Yeah.
as
Mm-hmm.
we're here blessed and thankful. I'm so thankful, for the blessings of God in my life. But we have to remember, like, we have brothers and sisters in other nations of the world that they need us praying for them and
Yeah.
lifting them up.
And there's a lot more sense of community in the churches because they had to share what they have. It's kind of like the early church.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever they can get, they share it. They share it. They want to make sure that everybody have, even if it's a little, but they have things in common. And even with the pastoral, which big part of what we do is work with the leaders and encourage them and figure it out how to help them out and not only in their spiritual needs but also in their natural needs. We try to help them to detach a little bit from the church because the life that they have is literally in the church.
Yeah.
Everything revolves around the church. So I try to explain to them the life of the leadership in other nations is a little bit different. People have their jobs and they fulfill their hours and they're reachable, but they're not involved in your life as much as
Yeah.
happened in Cuba. And and there it's just completely the opposite. It's like people is constantly around the leaders.
Mm.
It's like they live around them. So I can't say if it's good or bad. I know it's their style, but I know it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And big part of what we do is try to make sure not only to help them to fulfill their goals, but to make sure that they're well taken care of, because if they are not well taken care, no matter what's going on with the vision, it's not going to be fulfilled. So it's just different. It's just very different. And the nation in itself is challenging because there's lack of everything. So every time that we take people to come with us and help us to do what we do, I always tell them it's like we do trips 4 days, 3 nights, or no more than that. I said because your mind is not gonna leave you alone because you're trying to understand number one what happened there, number two because we live in a nation where everything that breaks, we fix it.
Yeah.
It's our nature to, well, we can do this, or we can do this. Why they not do this? And you find yourself asking that question constantly, like why they should do this to
Yeah.
fix this problem. They should do, and it's not a matter of if it's fixable or not. It's just a matter of nobody wants to fix anything. So it's very, very tiring for your mind and for your body because of what you had to try to endure just doing the work.
Yeah.
But again, the spirit is really, really exciting because you really, really get humble before God and say, okay, Lord, I think I can be more serious about what we're doing. I think I can give you a little more time. I think I can become
Yeah.
more devoted. I think I can have a little more determination. After you see the environment of the church on the island and you come back home, it really puts you in perspective how comfortable we are.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think, not having been, but I have friends that have been and seen stories like just the way like the passion that they have for the things of God, I think is something that we can really take away. Like you said, we are so comfortable and that's a blessing here, but just the passion for and the dependency on, the things of God, I think is really, really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's like I say, and if you would ask me 10 years ago what was the plan for the nation when we went in, the first time I heard the word and I went in, I have no idea we would be doing this. But I'm so excited for what the Lord is doing in a nation that, for example, the concept of missions is unheard.
Mm-hmm.
It's not spoken in the churches because it's a negative term for them. Because
Oh
people,
wow.
most of the time that they talk about leaving is because they want to escape. They want to. In the early days, you were a traitor to the nation because you want to leave the island.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the church became this. Well, if you leave, you're going to miss the plan of God, and then it became for many people kind of like a bad term or a bad meaning. If I leave this island, it's because I'm disobeying God.
Oh wow.
So here we come in with, hey, God is still calling people to the mission field, and
Yeah.
there's no reason why you guys should not answer the call. That's not limited to only for nations that they have money. That is for everybody that believes that they are called to go.
Yeah, the Great Commission isn't just for America and Europe.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
It was in the Bible. They have the same Bible that we have in a different language, but it's the same
yeah.
scripture. It's for
Yeah.
everybody
So when,
worldwide.
when we start ministering on missions concerning the call of God and reaching out to the nations of the world, then a conflict arises again because the leaders, for them, it's been a negative term. For the people, it's been exciting, but they have a conflict within themselves. If I leave, am I missing God now, or what's happening on this? So we've been we've been seeing the potential of what God can do with people that is been in hell, because that's literally how they live.
Yeah.
And you get them out of that scenario and put them in a little bit better situation, I think they can literally plow over nations, cities, and neighborhoods with the vision of going in to do the God's will, just because they already been in a really, really bad situation.
And there's a lot of countries that they can get into that we can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we can equip them, we can send them, and they can go to other places around the world without even being looked at twice that we as Americans couldn't get into.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so
Just
awesome.
expanding their vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's them like God has plans beyond. Yes, you know, you need your food. Obviously, you need to be able to survive in power and things like that. But he's like such a bigger God than just these things that, and we have deal with that here in the States too. This is my situation and this is all I can focus on. And God's like, but there's so much more. There's so much more.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, I think that is one reason why it is important, even like for people in the States to go on a mission trip or, people there to go see like God is so much bigger and he's got, he's the same God over there, yes, but there's different aspects of him. And I think just to see even another people group or another culture and, how they worship him, it just like, it kind of, I don't know, it makes our problems or our circumstances, whatever it is, feel smaller sometimes because it's like you realize how big God actually is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
So, kind of taking maybe another turn in the conversation, you mentioned earlier that you guys have, lived in different states and you've lived in different countries. Can you kind of talk about how you know that your season is changing? Like how you can sense with the Lord that like maybe one chapter is coming to an end and another's beginning, or kind of what that has looked like in you guys' life?
It's been a ride. um,
You really want to talk about
the
that?
term walking on water is really literally what it feels like.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of what I said earlier, like when you're first starting out, it's like, but then the more you advance with God, you understand his voice better, you understand the leadings, you understand the signs. I think the clearest picture of transition, first of all, when you're transitioning from one place to another, at the end of this season, when you're at the end of a season, you just start feeling like there's
Uneasy.
something's changing. Just
Yeah.
inside yourself, there's something's changing. And then the longer that it goes on, you see that the grace that God has on your life for that place has moved. And so you're like, this doesn't feel like it used to. This is not as comfortable as it used to be. Or, you're just kind of like, you really just get this kind of like, okay, there's something else in the process of whatever's out ahead, because this is like, God's not going to tell you like, okay, in 10 years, this is what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Because for at least for me, I'm either going to try to get it done myself. I'm going to like try to speed it up, or I'm going to be like, not a chance. There's no way. When I was
Yeah.
19 years old, moving to the Philippines, and God would have said, in a few years, you're going to meet your husband. He's from Argentina, and you guys are going to do blah, 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 blah. I would be like, that ain't happening, or I would be like every Argentinian I came across, I'd be like, is it you? So we would totally mess things up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, that's just how I've always sensed, is just, when you live a consecrated life, like consecration isn't a one-time thing. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you get saved, I consecrate my life to God, and that's it. It is a daily take up your cross and follow
Yeah.
him, consecrate yourself to him. So when you live a consecrated life, he can do so much with your life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that's, I think, the key. So then when you start, like when I was in the Philippines, I knew I wasn't going to be there forever, but I didn't know what was next. And I was still very young in the ministry and age and stuff. And so I'm like, I just started praying, and I'm like, God, I know there's something else. I know there's something else. And so I just spent a lot of time praying. And then I happened to be like on AOL Instant Messenger. You kids don't know what I'm talking about, but it was this pre-text message thing. And the director of the people that were starting the school in Chile happened to be online, and she just kind of started chatting with me. We knew each other. And she was telling me about Chile and what they were going to be doing. And just something inside of me, I was like, ooh, I want to go. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like I was kind of like, in all honesty, I was like, I don't know if I can work for those people, but I knew, I'm like, but if this is God, like,
Yeah.
this is, so it sparked something in me. And the grace for the Philippines was leaving, like things that I enjoyed and just being there, I was starting to get like, ugh, ugh. Just
Yeah.
like, it's funny how it works. And it's really worked like that.
Yeah,
Every
I think,
time that we've
and I
transitioned.
think it's also depending on how the Lord get comfortable and how the Lord speaks to you.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
totally
Because
different.
I'm
He takes
completely
forever to
opposite
catch
to
up.
her. Like she, for some divine reason, she gets information way ahead of me.
Yeah, it's not that I'm more
Way
holy or
ahead.
anything, but
And she started talking about things that I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
And this is a good marriage lesson
Yeah.
Yeah.
because
I'm like,
when
I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen anything. I'm not even thinking about that. So for me, if I don't hear it, see it, know, understand, then there's no point of talking about
and
it.
we don't do anything if we're not on the same page. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what the decision is.
Yeah.
If we're not on the same page about something, we don't make any
Yeah.
decisions until we're on the same
Yeah.
page. And there's some frustrations and some impatience getting to that point. I
I know, but I had to help.
Yeah, thank you, honey. But if you're not on the same page in marriage with something,
Yeah.
it's going to be you're not going to be in God's time. It's going to be, well, it's your fault. You made us do this,
Yeah.
and you pressured it. You know what I mean? And so and we've lived it time and time. Actually, like a couple of times. There were a couple of times we were immediately knew, like, okay,
Yeah.
this is it. This is what we need to do. But then two
Yeah.
large major moves, I was way out ahead of him, and now it was a difficult time because then I just had to like trust God. I'm just like, God,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to speak to
Like
him.
when you're single, like for example, you were talking about your move, is
Hmm.
you making the decision. Yes, it's people affected, but you don't carry any more responsibility in yourself.
Right. Right.
For us, making changes or when we feel like there's a change coming, the way that the Lord speaks to me is more instant, immediate. Like
Last minute.
for me, everything it comes as an order. Maybe
Yeah.
because I was raised by a military kind of a school, and that becomes easier for me to respond, to understand,
Yeah.
or to get familiar with. So everything is like whenever I hear something, I know that I know that I know. I'm not hesitating on that. But in her case, she hears things way before me, and it's not that she knows more or she's getting more information. No, it's just she's seeing things way ahead,
Yeah.
and so we just need to get to what we need to figure it out is how to get the right timing.
Yeah.
Uh,
And how to
once
not get frustrated
once
in the
we
process.
get the right information, but I think the main thing is to get familiar with how God speaks to you.
Yeah.
You know,
And we have two teenage daughters now. So like our last move last year from Colorado um, was, a time where people would say, you don't move teenagers
yeah,
away
Yeah.
from, where they've been for the last 10 years. And so it was like we knew, no, God is in this. God, we didn't know why. I don't know if
Hmm.
we've ever, anytime God's ever transitioned us, I knew basically I was going to the same thing in Chile, but when we moved from Chile to the States in 2006, we were going to help a pastor, but that's all we knew. When
Yeah.
we left the New York and moved to Alabama, we kind of knew what we were going to do down here. I think it was when we moved from Texas, when we moved from Alabama to Texas, then we moved from Texas, and we knew what we were going to do there. But then when we moved from Texas to Colorado, we did not know.
we have no
We had
idea.
no idea, and neither of us wanted to. Neither of us, we liked Texas. We enjoyed where we were, and then it wasn't until not long after we got to Colorado that we realized why God had put us there. And so then the move here was kind of the same thing. Like,
Hmm.
we don't know why, but we just know that this is what
This is the
we're
right thing.
supposed to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's that, like they talk about in the Old Testament with how God led the Israelites with a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day. And so when you see that, when they saw the fire move, they would follow the fire, and then when
Yeah.
they would follow the cloud. And so it's just that's what's
Yeah.
inside of us. It's very difficult to explain.
Yeah.
People who have walked it out understand it. But I think it's the most important is how you act in the transition process,
Mm.
because a lot of times there's an element of discomfort,
Mm.
there's an element of frustration,
Yeah.
because it's not quite, you're not quite ready to take that next step. It's not quite time, but it's getting there. And
Hmm.
so our flesh really likes to
Yeah.
rise up in those times. And so that's when you really have to be careful of not to get ahead of God, not to get behind God and to not just get really frustrated in that season, because it's not an easy season at all. And so I would
I think
say
that the best way to describe when the grace is moving is uh, like Katie was saying about the cloud. But and a lot of people might say, well, yes, I understand what that means, but how I interpret that, the Bible says, come and taste and see that God is good.
Mm-hmm.
There's a taste for things that change.
Yeah.
There's a taste concerning what you're doing that change. There's a taste concerning what you're getting involved that change. And I always make the example when I grew up obviously in South America, and we have, I'm gonna say the product. I hope they don't charge you for the promotion. Coke, like
Yeah.
you have Coke made with sugar cane. Well,
Mm-hmm.
when we came to the States and they offered me Coke, I said, this thing is horrible. I can't take this thing. It's horrible.
because of the corn syrup.
But it's because it was a different product that they used
Yeah.
to make it sweet. And if people that like Cokes, when they see the what they call here the Mexican Coke or the glass bottle Coke, they say, I want that because that's the good one. That's the one that have
Mm-hmm.
the best flavor.
The real sugar.
And I think that's what's happening with God. When you start seeing that the taste is changing,
Yeah.
you know that something is happening. And that's the moment you need to start asking questions. Okay, Lord, what's happening? Is it me that I'm not paying attention? Is it you that you're changing seasons? What's going on? Because the taste is not, something's changing in the taste.
Yeah. No, that's really good. It's true. All right. Well, before we wrap up, do you guys have anything else you want to add? You want to say? You have on your heart to say at all?
Yeah. For the young generation, um, especially the one that we must reach out today.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen anything. We haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
And we're praying for them to get to see what the Lord is doing. Not
Yeah.
only right
Amen.
now, but in the days to come. There's an urgency for the harvest. There's an urgency for laborers. We we pray for them. We encourage them. Answer the call. Don't wait. There's nothing more fun you're gonna find than doing God's will. There's
Yeah.
nothing more exciting that you're gonna find just obeying God. We need you. We need you, and we have so many souls that we still have to get to the kingdom of God.
Absolutely.
So, if there's anything that we can say to the young people, and even the older, the ones that might think, well, I just got old, I don't qualify anymore for this.
Mm.
We can use everybody. God can
Yeah.
use everybody. So there's no age too old to answer, not too young to be ready for God. God can use you, and we must be about the Father's business in this day. So
Amen.
encourage them to uh, get around somebody that can tell them a little bit about God, tell them a little bit about how God works, show them and teach them and maybe mentor them a little bit concerning what is how maybe God's will looks for them, and go and do it because we need them. We need help. We need all the help possible, and
Yeah.
and
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
everybody qualifies.
I think what I feel like the Lord showed me when we tried to record the other podcast back
Yeah, this is our
back.
second time, unfortunately, due to
This is
technical
much
difficulties.
better because my voice actually is here this time. But I feel like the Lord showed me that if the enemy goes around like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. The scripture tells us that. And I believe that the enemy, if he can't distract the youth, because there's so many distractions, if he can't
Mm-hmm.
distract them, then he's going to discourage them.
Mm.
And there's so many ways that discouragement
Yeah.
can come through your own thoughts, through family, through situations. And if he can't discourage you, then he's going to try to destroy you.
Yeah.
But when we know that God is on our side and that he is backing us up and all of heaven is backing us up. He's the, I like that the NLT says, the New Living Translation, the God of angel armies.
Mm.
He is always with us. And so if we can if the youth can get past that distraction phase and get past the discouragement and get past the enemy just trying to completely wipe them out, because he's after this generation.
Yeah.
He's very much after, because it's a powerful generation. It's a
Amen.
generation that's like, I'm not going to just take that because you said it. I'm going to stand up. They're getting fired up for God.
Yeah.
And so once they realize who they are in Christ and the things that God can do in and through them, and just with, like I said, consecration, just being consecrated to God. I'm so glad I was a 19-year-old introverted middle child that I said yes to God, and God has taken me all over the world, and I've just experienced so many cool things and just watched him do so many amazing things. And I never one day, difficult, absolutely. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
But not one day have I regretted saying yes to God. Not
Yeah.
one day. But I can't even imagine my life outside of the will of God. I can't even imagine how awful it would be to not be doing what God's called me to do.
Amen.
So.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you
No
for
problem.
having us,
Thank you
and
for
thank you
having
for
us.
doing this.
Appreciate
This
that.
is so important. So good.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. All right. Well, we'll catch you guys on the next one.